We're live.
Good morning. This is the 10th and last scheduled meeting of the Citizens Government Review Committee. We have a call to the roll, please. Brenda?
Okay, Chair Kalp,
Here.
Vice Chair Jacobson. Here. Committee Member Brocksterman,
Here.
Lloyd, Martin. Here. And Surratt.
Here.
All right, we have 5 present with Committee Member Lloyd absent.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. We have the minutes of the May 21 meeting. Have you all had a chance to look those over? I'm sorry, not the May 21 meeting, the June 4 meeting, right?
Yes.
Yes. June 4
Yes.
meeting.
Do I have it wrong on the agenda? No.
Here we go, okay. I would add, Connie, there was a memorandum that I had prepared. Was that submitted to the committee?
Yes, it was. And it's part of the packet on
Okay,
record in the
it
clerk's
wasn't
office.
part of the packet. It's a 3-page memorandum, and I didn't see it in the packet or referenced in the minutes.
Okay.
It was headed Identification of Code Provisions Prohibiting Governing Body Interference with the Duties of a City Manager.
Yeah. Yes, I can reference it in the minutes if you like. It's part of the permanent record, but if you
Okay.
want it referenced in the minutes,
Yeah.
it's fine.
If we could, if someone would offer a motion to amend the minutes to make reference to that, and it'd be attachment B to the minutes. Or Brenda, how do you want to proceed on this? If it wasn't considered by the committee, then I would pass it out tonight, or today, and make it part of the minutes of this meeting.
No, it was considered by the committee, and it's part of the record. It's just not part of the attachments to the minutes. They discussed it, but there wasn't anything. It's totally up to the committee. If you want them attached to the June 4th minute.
Oh, I just want it part
Yep.
of the record, either
is.
for that meeting or this
Yep.
meeting.
It is.
Okay.
So,
And I don't know if you,
so you need to,
Have
if you
you-
would, tell me where you guys want to insert it as attachment B on June 4 minutes, because that's when you guys looked at it.
I mean, as long as it's part of the permanent record, it sounds like it really doesn't make too much of a difference, so I will make a motion to include as attachment B to the June 4th minutes, your memorandum.
okay. Thank you, Zach. Is there,
Second.
and is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Sorry.
Motion to approve as amended.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Brenda, do we have any citizen comment? Any members of the public want to come forward? Okay,
No, sir.
once again. Then I think we turn our attention to the report. And you have in your packet 2 documents, at least 2 documents. One is the PowerPoint, and the other is the draft report. And this is our last chance to do some editing and refinement of the report. And Brenda, the edits that are in here, the red line and so forth, did those come out of the previous meeting?
No, so what you have before you is the document. So those of you that, or you all have sent me documents to compile into this report, and that is what I did. Any edits you see, the font in purple were your suggestions for summaries, because Connie had also done an introduction and summaries. So I put yours in purple font just to make, so it's different. And then there was some red strike through that I did based on committee action. So for instance, like in Brian's summary, there was a reference to 188 days for response on documents, and it was my understanding the committee did not want to include that. So if there's,
Absolutely.
you know, that's the only change that I did. There was two spots in there, and then on one of the parts in the introductory, I just expanded on a website and for the web page, and then where they can get the hard copy document of this. So that was the only 2 changes that I made.
Thank you.
Okay, my recollection, committee, was that at a previous meeting, when we talked about the format, we would have an introductory section. Well, we'd have the introduction, talking about the committee meetings and membership and so forth. And then we would have a listing of the recommendations, just a bullet points or the basic recommendations, prefaced by a very brief summary of each recommendation. And that would be followed by the full text of the committee action and consideration of the different, now seven different issues. So some of the, if you look at page 3 of the document that we have here with the heading of recommendations, some of them have a summary tied to them, others are just a straight recommendation. So how do you want to proceed on this? I mean, we need to be consistent on each one of the topics.
Okay.
I believe we need to be consistent.
Okay, I'm confused. What is the inconsistency?
Well, if you look on here, I mean, we've got the red line
Right,
on the first page, and
right.
over here on on page 4, under interlocal cooperation, for example, there is a summary there.
Suggestion.
And over on the next page, page 5, under auditor, there is a recommendation following a version of the summary. And on number 7, issue number 7 on page 6, there is a very brief statement of the recommendation and then a summary of what the committee looked at. So I'm just, give me some guidance here. How do you
I
want to proceed?
think we should incorporate what you're summarizing into the recommendation. Like
Well,
put it all into the
I
paragraph.
think that's what Brenda said she did. For example, going back down to number 1, the city manager form of government, lifting some of the text that was offered in as a summary and putting it into the recommendation. Are you all comfortable with that
Yeah.
approach?
Okay,
I,
yeah.
Yes.
I'll do devil's advocate. I feel like for what we present to governing body, the summaries are fine because then they can also come in here and look at the full text. I think that the summary that you have in here for some of the recommendations would be great for our discussion with the governing body. But sometimes it feels like we're saying the same thing twice in our what is supposed to be summary page. And I guess that was my question of inconsistency. We pretty much just talked about the inconsistencies being some of them have what is just labeled Jim Cobb summary and others don't. And maybe I was unclear on what, I just thought those were like notes for yourself when we go talk to,
Well, they
No,
can
that's,
be
Jim wants to
presentation
insert that.
material.
You want to insert your purple in here, right?
for all of them, so like,
Wherever it shows up, like under number 4. Am I right, Jim? You're saying the
he
purple
wants
needs to
separate,
become,
like, he wants to have the recommendations, but also wants a summary.
oh,
But I think it all should be,
Well, that's the question. I thought that's where we left it a couple of weeks ago, a couple of
Yeah.
meetings back, but we're here now.
yeah.
So the
We got to
question
make a
is,
decision.
you want to have just the recommendation?
okay.
If we talk about 3 sections, section 1 is the introduction, okay?
Okay.
Section 2 is the summary of the recommendations.
Okay.
And if you just want to have that be the recommendations themselves, just a listing of the 7 recommendations.
No, because that's not all inclusive.
Unless I'm not reading it correctly, the way Brenda has it written up in the recommendations is basically what the
I'm
summary.
sorry, Brian, say it again.
The way Brenda has it written in the recommendations has the summary pretty much detailed in it,
Correct.
is the way I'm reading it. So
That was
I don't
my
think
question.
I don't think we need anything extra as a summary or another bullet point
Yes.
for the 7.
right.
Because I'm
the
reading
way the
these
recommendation's written, I
under
think
the
it's
book,
perfect.
yeah.
Right, I think that if we're calling it part 2, the summary of recommendations, it's just a short form, so if I were on governing body looking at a recommendation form and I just wanted short form, I don't, this is going to sound crude, I don't
Yeah.
care about a summary, I care about, give me a
The
couple sentences
details,
on
just
what
the
are you
basics.
recommending.
Yeah, just the
And then that's
basics.
why we have summaries in our issue papers to give further context to those recommendations.
Yeah.
So I feel like if there's something to add to the summaries, they should be added to the text
Yeah.
of each issue paper individually rather than to the summaries,
As a
or else
whole.
it kind of defeats the purpose of a summary. We've
Okay.
just pretty much stated twice what our issue papers were.
Okay, well, let's go issue by issue then. We may go pretty quickly here. On city manager form of government, are you all comfortable with the text, the way it reads in the one paragraph?
I'd like to comment on the last sentence about our brand-new city manager. Is that
Should we
relevant?
not?
Is it
Yeah.
relevant?
I like it.
I like
Okay.
it.
All right, okay,
Yeah,
is,
I'm good with it.
okay.
That's the double.
Yeah.
Yes.
Double underlined, yep.
You want it struck?
No, we
No,
want to
leave it.
I
Okay,
keep
all
it,
right,
yeah.
okay. And as far as the other struck language that was in the summary that I had prepared, nothing else to be put into the recommendation. If it's part of the presentation, that's another matter.
Right, and I think that, when we give our presentation, you have the freedom to give your notes and give the
Within bounds.
context. And, but as far as a report goes, that's going to be accessible online, they'll have, the summaries and the discussion that we had and who we heard from. So
Okay.
I think that one paragraph is fine.
Okay, so number one. What about number two, elections, terms, and representation?
The only change on there was some capitalization, so it looks
Yeah,
great
I-
to me.
Good for me.
Yep.
I think it looks okay.
Well, let's all just take a minute to read through it here. Brenda, was this is right out of the part three recommendation, right? Same language?
Correct. So the final documents that you sent me are what's in the report.
Right.
Okay. Everybody okay with number two?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. And number three, and this, okay. Number three, follow-up procedures.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
And Brian, this is your verbiage,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet, so give me a minute.
Well, it's the same one that we've had for a couple of weeks now,
Yes,
right? So
that's
Yeah.
changed.
outside of the struck line, about 180 days.
And she struck it back here in the back where your summary report is, so.
it's struck in both
I
spots.
think
There's,
it's.
that's our
it's-
consistency.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Brenda.
Okay. Any suggested changes to number three?
Nope.
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 Okay. All right. Okay, any changes to the recommendation itself? And then I assume we want to delete the language in purple from this section, is that correct?
Well, in our recommendation, we list it as they would, at the last sentence, interlocal agreements would be given to the governing body by the city manager or city auditor. Should we say proposed city auditor? Because we don't really have a city auditor position at this point, right?
And we
Or
haven't,
should we just leave it?
well, and at this point, we haven't even talked about a city auditor until part 5
So
here.
should we remove it?
Well, proposed is
See
fine. 'cause-
recommendation
Right.
5 or
Yeah,
Proposed?
I
the
think
next
my-
bullet.
Right, and I think this gets to my point of the difference between the recommendation and the summaries. Because, Jim, you wrote the interlocal cooperation portion, right? So what I want to avoid is us saying the same thing twice and then also having a full issue paper
Yeah.
in it. Do you feel, as the author of the recommendation, that the summary provides more quality than just having the recommendation? I mean, without context, I feel like we're saying the same thing twice because we're giving the recommendation twice in 2 paragraphs.
Well, I'm sorry, Zach, I think I lost the train there. It's on me, not you.
My
Lack of sleep.
My question was just, do we feel like we're saying the same thing twice? We're saying our recommendation in the first paragraph, and then you've also added it in your suggestion in the second paragraph. Do we feel like it's redundant?
Well, my understanding from previous conversation was that you wanted this kind of language out. This would be, what's in purple here at the bottom of the page, at the top of the next page, was the idea of a summary to the recommendation, which we dismissed that. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for providing the context for the recommendations, which is what we have the full issue papers for.
Do you feel like the recommendation paragraph states what you have in the summary?
I think
pretty
along with the
basically?
presentation, it'll
It'll be
we'll
okay,
cover it.
so we can
Okay.
remove that?
Brenda?
Yeah, I just have one clarification. Would you all like to leave the term "or city auditor," or do you want to delete it since it's a separate recommendation?
A compromise would be to say, instead of, it would be or a small cap city auditor.
Or proposed?
Or a
Proposed.
proposed city auditor. I like
The
that.
proposed city
That way it
auditor.
also brings their attention to the next
The
point
next
of
bullet.
the city
And it would
auditor.
probably be the, because we are making a recommendation.
There you
so
go.
The
Let's do
proposed
that.
city
Or
auditor.
the
Let-
proposed,
Yes.
okay,
Correct.
got it. And I will delete the purple language.
Okay.
Yes.
You want to say proposed or recommendation? Recommended. What's the?
Proposed.
We're
The
proposing.
Proposed.
Okay, all right. Wordsmithing, okay.
All right. Okay.
And I am going to ask you to indulge me just one more thing on the interlocal cooperation. I think of reading it just the recommendation cold makes it look like it's a city-county thing. It's not a city-county thing. Interlocal agreements are with cities and rural water districts, cities and townships, cities and counties, and cities and cities. So I think I would suggest where cooperation, if you go down about 6 lines, where cooperation with other local units of government
Okay,
can result in efficiencies and economies.
Other entities?
other.
So with other local units of government, is that okay?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
fine with me.
Yeah.
Like I said, you're the author of the recommendation, so whatever you feel you're comfortable with. I just
on
want to make sure that,
Don't go that far, Zach.
But on the cooperation, on the paper, it says among exchange of information among participating entities. So do you want to use the common language in both places? Instead of governments, use entities on page
Where is
13.
that?
I'm
You
looking at
have
page
unit of,
13.
if participating
yeah.
unit
Yeah,
of
we'll
government.
get back to there, yeah, on page 13.
But you want to use that same language?
Yeah.
Because does it have to be a government entity that the city enters an agreement with?
It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I'm okay with that. Brenda, are you okay with where we are?
Just one clarification, yeah. So do you want to use unit of governments or unit of entities in both places, on this page and on page 13? What do you want to use?
With other local units of government?
Okay, and again on page 13, correct?
No, it's fine on 13, just leave it the way it
Okay.
is.
Okay,
good deal.
So that's number 4.
Yes.
We're okay?
Yep.
Number 5, city auditor.
I think the purple should be added to the bottom of your recommendation.
What's that?
I say the purple that is left should be added to the bottom of that paragraph, the top paragraph. Recommendation, under recommendation.
Just copy and paste that whole thing?
Yeah, up to there, and take out the red part.
I'm okay with that.
Does that
You
make
guys-
sense?
Connie?
Sure.
Zach? Brian?
Yep, it's good enough with me.
I'm all right.
Okay. You had that, Brenda? Okay.
committee members, on number 6, the.
Number 6.
Yeah, the underline in blue is just a suggestion to capture that 10-year thing. Feel free to edit as you please.
Okay.
Any changes on number 6?
No.
None that aren't already highlighted, so. Say as amended.
Number 7. On number 7, there does need to be some lead-in to explain why, what the issue is. And that could be,
Do you think the first paragraph of what you have in your summary
Yeah.
could be added into the recommendation? That gives a little backstory, or no?
I would favor that first paragraph because it's putting in there that, making specific reference to the part of the charter that has been allegedly violated
Okay.
and the absence of any meaningful penalty. And I know we had a memoranda from the city attorney's office on all this.
But for the sake of consistency, none of the other 6 have a lead-in of why we're making the recommendation.
Right, I think that's what we're, and maybe that's what
Debating over.
I've been miscommunicating, is that this summary is just the short form of, here's what we're recommending. If you'd like to know why we're recommending it,
Go to
Read
the
on.
recommendation.
continue to read on, and you get the full
So
summary
it's-
there.
Yeah.
So does this need to go in
Into the summary?
body?
Yeah.
Right, I think that if we want to talk about, and I know that Champagne's not here, but this kind of language would be great for the issue paper itself.
Yeah, maybe we could put that into it.
Right.
Well, if we don't, there still needs to be some kind of context for somebody just sitting here looking at the 3 lines of the recommendation. There needs to be a reference to the provision of the charter that limits the council from not taking any action involving themselves in administrative matters and not dealing with city officers and employees. So, I mean, I understand you don't want to have a summary of the basis for the recommendation, but there needs to be some context. So, in order to prevent, let's talk about it here. The language being, in order to prevent the alleged interference of the duties of the city manager by members of the elected governing body, the committee recommends da-da-da-da-da. It could be pretty brief, but it needs to say what the hell we're talking about, you know?
Okay.
I mean, I think as a comparison, right, we're talking about consistency. So I hate to take us all the way back, but I wrote, number 2, election terms and representation. So 3 issues, and we had 1 paragraph on a recommendation. It pretty much just states action or no action. There's really not a whole lot of context because the context happens in the issue paper. So like when we talked about, it is recommended that a commission remain at 9 members for redistricting, but appointing a chair from the administrative judge, the Topeka Municipal Court, right? There's no real context on why that needs to happen. It's just our recommendation. The context happens in my issue paper on page, whatever it happens to be, page 8. So consistency-wise, we have other things in here that don't really provide a lot of context. This is just listing out, here are our recommendations. Here are the summaries of our recommendations.
And then
Okay.
go to the
All
issue
right.
paper.
Then go to the
So-
issue paper to find out why we
Right.
held that recommendation.
But I also don't
No.
disagree. I don't dislike what you just said, adding a couple of words at the beginning, in order to, I don't want to say fight off, but in order to improve ethics and avoid conflicts of interest or administration, the committee recommends, any kind of brief language right there before. I think that's totally fine. I think if we had too much context, it almost,
Okay, just one sentence.
Based on input from conferees, the committee recommends blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
Do we need to insert that?
I think
Oh, that might be
that would be
good.
entirely appropriate.
Yeah.
Because, Jim, you want to know where the idea came from, or you want that in our summary at the beginning. Is that what I'm getting from you?
Well, I'm conceding understand that the committee doesn't want to have a summary leading up to the description of the recommendation, just the recommendation itself. In this one instance, I don't think anybody sitting here looking at this, I think they'll be puzzled by it, just as it is.
Not enough
Because it's like,
context
What are we
in it.
talking about here?
So what's the question
Why do
we
we
need
have
to
a
answer?
signature, acknowledge receipt of what?
Okay, so Jim, what's the question you want us to answer
Well,
in this first paragraph?
just a simple phrase, in order to prevent council member interference with administrative matters.
Okay.
In order to
Oh.
prevent council member
To address?
violation of the charter
Okay.
by engaging in administrative matters.
So something like to address concerns or to address reports of governing body members interfering with,
Administrative
Staff.
matters.
yeah.
Or city
Say that.
managers.
Brenda, did you have a?
I was looking at the language in purple that Jim wrote. What about the very first sentence? The committee heard credible testimony that, at least in the recent past, there have been violations, blah, blah, blah.
Therefore, the committee recommends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Bingo.
I'm fine
Put
with
that
that.
first
Yeah.
sentence and then, yeah, the committee recommends.
Okay, read that back one more time, would you, Brenda?
It's the
Sure.
first
It's just
sentence
the
in
first
purple.
sentence of
The
your
committee heard
recommendation.
credible testimony that, at least in the recent past, there have been violations of Section A2-28C of the Charter, the provision prohibiting council members from dealing with officers and employees under the city manager's supervision.
And then we'd run right into the committee recommends requiring
Yeah.
a signature.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay,
With that,
thank you.
okay.
Okay.
All right. Got it.
And then at the bottom of page 6, where it said the committee's report, Brenda, I'm thinking, I'm suggesting moving that up towards the front, maybe right after the introduction, you know? So somebody, to give it a little more profile, a little more attention, perhaps.
So just right before city
Yeah,
manager,
and
form of
It could be
government.
bold-faced or something.
So the bottom of page 2?
Yeah,
Okay.
You're talking about the committee's report containing details of that one?
Yep.
I mean, I'm fine with the idea of having a simple, brief report here, but there's 200 pages of resource documents that
Sure.
we got.
That we want them to be aware
And
of.
it's too much to print, all
Yeah.
of that, but people need to know that it's there and also know that the video's there. And Brenda, help me out on this, the videos that we have, thank God for videos, right? 10 years from now, the next time they go through this process, will that video still be there?
Maybe. It depends on how long. So council videos and committees and things like that, the retention on them is only 7 years because the actual record of meetings recordings are the minutes. So, but YouTube is infinite typically. So I know that you can go on now and see videos from 10 years from now,
Yeah.
but that's the short proper answer is our retention is 7 years. So,
So they may not be on the city website, but they'll be on YouTube.
yep,
Well,
And I know that's true because that's how I've been watching them to review my own notes.
yeah.
I doubt very much that 10 years from now, the next time there's a committee, that they're going to sit down and the first order of business will be to review all this, to screen all the video from 10 years earlier.
I hope they do.
But in truth, you know, some of the, I mean, you can't capture everything on paper. You know, some of the
Correct.
discussions we have only been on video, you know?
Yep.
And that's not anybody's fault. You can't put everything into the minutes and what the conferees say, you know?
Right.
And most of them came in without any written materials, and even the ones that did supplemented it, so.
Yeah.
You know, anyway.
I've got one
So
more
anyway.
question on 6, or 7. The remaining purple language, did we decide we wanted that?
Yeah, we were going to cut.
Just cut it all?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
cut all that out.
Okay, that takes us up to page 7.
Right to the issue papers.
Now, this might go fairly quickly, I suppose. I
hope
mean,
so.
we've
We've
been
been-
through all of this
Yeah.
multiple times. But I still want to ask you to take a minute here, because this will be the last chance to see it.
Yeah.
To look at it before it goes to the council.
I've looked at this a lot. The only thing that changed was that I added Mr. Fiander's name at the bottom of the
Yeah.
conferee list.
So table of contents wise, introduction will be 1, part 1, correct?
Yes.
And then this will be part 2 or phase 2? How do you guys want to label this stuff?
Do we want to do part 1 as introduction, part 2 summary of recommendations, part 3 issue papers?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what part 4 would be.
Conclusion.
Conclusion, yes.
Okay, so part 1 is intro. Would you say that again, Zach?
Brenda,
I'm sorry.
important
Yes.
edit. On the list of conferees, on the city manager form of government, page 7,
Okay,
League of Women Voters. Vicki Arnett, Dr. Glenda Overstreet Vaughn, April 9, space 2025.
oh, gotcha.
Table of contents wise, it would be introduction, summary of recommendations,
Okay,
issue papers, and conclusion.
thank you.
Do we want to have questions at the end of every paper presentation, or wait till the end to hold types of questions? How's that
Very
usually
end.
done?
Usually at the end.
At the end?
I've got it at the end.
Questions and discussion, yeah, at the end of the,
Because, I mean, they'll have this to reference as we sit there and, I don't want to say hound them about it, but sit there and discuss with them recommendations.
something on this page. Looks like this is.
Oh, can I go back to page 2? I think the first, Mayor Padilla's first name is not spelled correctly.
Yeah, good call out. Do we also, I guess, sorry to go back, do we also want to amend Director Glaudet's title, since she has a new title since that was her correct title then, it is not her correct title now. Do we want to amend it to reflect that? Or do we want to keep it?
Has that been changed, or is it still ongoing by the governing body?
It is,
about
it is
DEI
officially
stuff?
changed, so now it's
Last night?
Inclusive Communities, the Office of Inclusive Communities.
Yes, I will change that.
Okay.
Okay.
I will add titles behind Jim Reardon and Hannes too.
Okay.
Seems appropriate.
Now back to the issue papers.
So are we okay with the city manager paper?
I think it's perfect.
Okay, and then how about the elections one? Of course. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Page 8, very last line, Brenda,
Okay.
just a grammar thing.
Yep. What you got?
Says by the filing deadline, if 3 or fewer candidates are on the ballot.
Okay.
And Zach, I hadn't noticed this before. On page 9,
Yes.
under committee discussion and recommendations, number of council members, no action. The committee heard that 9 council members works well, allowing more members to sit on each committee and be at the same place without concern for the Open Meetings Act. I don't know how people might read into that that the number of members of the governing body is picked in order to circumvent the Open Meetings Act, which it's not, but it's susceptible to that reading. I mean, I hope it's not.
Well, I think the point was they didn't want it to be any smaller. So all the public comment we heard was
Yeah.
that 9 works great because it allows you to be more involved in the community at the same time. So it kind of is, not that it's set because to avoid Open Meetings Act, but it allows them
I
to
know,
be
but would
involved.
you agree? I mean, some folks would look at that and think, you know, conspiracy theorists, you know, that the reason you have 9 is so you can meet without violating the act. So
I guess I can't argue with you. I just don't view it like that, but I also only am accountable for
Yeah.
my own thoughts.
Yeah,
So
how
I know.
each person interprets
I appreciate
it.
that, but there are folks that would read that into it, but if you're not, it's
is
not
there a
matter of
recommendation
concern.
on how to amend that to read better?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a recommendation on how to reword that?
It's your call. I defer to you on it. You want to leave it alone?
How, anybody else have any, I don't know, if I just put,
I'm fine with
the
the way
committee
it's
heard that
written.
9 council members work well, period?
No.
I was trying to provide some context to why they thought it worked well, and that was the feedback that we got.
Can you say without potential violations of the coma?
We can, absolutely. Would that help? I still feel
That's
like
a step in the right direction.
Using the
yeah,
word
yeah.
violations makes it sound like it really is trying to
Yeah,
circumvent
without
violations.
concern sounds a little dismissive, yeah. Okay.
We could say
So
allowing more
strike-
members to sit on each committee and not be in violation of the Kansas Open Meetings Act.
And comply
And
with.
allowing
And
more members to
still
sit on each
comply.
committee and still comply with the Kansas Open Meetings Act.
Bingo.
Or if you wanted to say allowing more members to sit on each committee without constituting a majority of the governing body.
That's a good, thank you,
And then,
Mary.
and then you capture
All
the
essence.
spirit of coma without
Actually saying it.
throwing it
Yeah.
out there
Yeah.
and
I like that language
Yeah.
then. We'll use
Let's
what
go
Mary
with
said
that.
Thank you.
because I'm not
Appreciate
an
that.
attorney, so. Brenda, did you catch that language as well? Okay.
One other item to think about through the entire report is if you want to reference the city council or the governing body, it needs to be consistent everywhere on what's determined. So,
I say governing body.
What's the correct terminology, I guess?
Depends on what you're
count,
talking about,
yeah.
with or without the mayor.
Yeah, with the mayor, it's governing body. Council is without.
And most of the things we talk about also include the mayor. So I would imagine that to be the most accurate and
Consistent.
consistent would be to use the language governing
Governing
body.
body.
I think I did use, obviously, council quite a bit when talking about
9 members.
a couple of mine because they were council-specific rather than mayor-specific. But now I'm going back to confirm this because I know that I used it a couple of times.
I know like code of ethics, you would want to use governing body, of course, we want them all,
Yeah.
that, so. You can just let me know, Zach.
Okay. Yep, I'm rereading mine as we
Okay.
speak.
I'll go towards the bottom of page 10, under the redistricting. The last sentence, the committee also recommends that it is written in the charter that when the redistricting committee makes its own recommendations to the governing body, the new boundary lines are not met. We're recommending that the charter be amended, right?
Right.
Okay, I think that, so we say the committee also recommends
Committee also
the charter
recommends the
be
charter
amended
be
so that
amended.
when, dot, 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 dot,
The committee also recommends that the charter be amended to state that when the redistricting commission makes its own recommendation to the governing body, and so on. Good enough with everybody?
so you'd read, the committee also
So
recommends.
the committee also recommends that the charter be amended to state that when the redistricting commission makes its own recommendation to the governing body,
Yeah.
new boundary lines are not made. Yep.
Brenda, you have that?
Yep.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Is there anything else on page 10?
I think so.
Okay.
Brenda, I don't think I have any amendments to make on governing body versus council. I just used them specifically. So.
Awesome, thanks.
And Brenda, with follow-up procedures, I would say change it to governing body rather than city council staff.
Okay. Everywhere that it
Or
states, okay.
everywhere that says city council, change it to
Okay,
governing body.
I say there's a couple of times it says council or city council, so.
Brian, on the conferees, I think you're short a couple folks. I mean, a number of people talked about the failure to follow up. And that, I mean, that
Okay, that's the
whole
only one that I
topic
can
there.
remember.
I'm sorry?
That's the only one I could remember.
Well,
Ms. Birch from
Jump.
Jump?
Yeah.
And the league was there at the same meeting,
Yeah, the league.
so I
the
don't know
league hit on
when.
it.
Wasn't
Okay.
Melody from Jump?
Pardon me?
Or you got?
Melody
talking
was
to
from
myself
Jump,
over here.
right?
yeah, she's from Jump.
Yeah, okay, so Melody Bird that he has listed is from Jump.
Right, but at the same meeting, because they sat together was the League of Women Voters. And during that discussion, did they,
I don't remember
Have
her saying that,
comments?
bringing that up. I just remember Melody, but
I mean, I actually would kind of agree with Brian that to my memory and to the videos that I've watched back, I think everybody has issues with follow-up or communication or things like that, but the only one that comes out to me that really talked about follow-up procedures and things like that would have been from Jump.
do we need to add her organization on that page?
Yeah.
We could, yeah, I mean, we could put Melody Bird,
Jump.
Topeka
Da-da-da,
Jump.
So at the very least, adding the League of Women Voters and then,
You're saying no?
I don't remember League of Women Voters saying that, being
Okay.
part of she was sitting there when the conversation, but I don't remember her bringing that up per se. Alderman.
Well,
She was sitting there with her,
Yeah.
but I don't remember her bringing that up.
Yeah, no,
in
she
conjunction
did,
with it.
yeah, because she talked about the sustainability study that,
Okay.
that the city dropped the ball on. Thank you for the video record of
Yes.
that.
Well,
And then we
yeah.
talked about housing, both with the Jump folks and with the league.
Right.
Okay.
And housing
Well,
was
then
an issue
we'll
with the
just-
league too.
Yes.
And
We'll
the
add Vicky Arnett,
the-
League Women Voters to
Yeah.
it.
notorious 2020 housing study, so.
But was that, because the league had two like issue papers they gave us as handouts, right? There was
Yeah.
one in follow-up or, study after study and.
Brian,
that was
I
not-
think it's important, we show that we're not just pulling stuff out of the air,
I
you
did too.
know.
Like I said, that's the only one that I remembered when I wrote
Yeah.
it. So,
I got you.
Well, then we'll go ahead and add the
Add the league
League of Women
and,
Voters
and I
representative
think both
to the
names from
conflict.
the,
Topeka Jump members?
Yeah, that was
Sarah too?
Dr. Overstreet, yeah.
Okay.
again, Brenda, you got all that?
You are so good at what you do. Both of you guys, we cannot function without you, really.
Well, thank you.
It's
That was
appreciated. It's effortless from our view.
It's not effortless from their view. It's not.
But from me looking at them, it's like, oh, well, just a little, and it's just like, yeah, seamless.
Brian, you got to appreciate, for those of us that believe in a random universe, this is a difficult topic to get our heads around, okay? This is a struggle. This is a struggle.
Do we have any other additions or corrections to follow-up procedures?
I didn't have any.
I don't think so.
All right.
That's
So are we ready
looking
for
pretty good.
interlocal cooperation? All right.
You've moved on to interlocal?
Are you, is that okay?
Well, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yep, I
Yes.
think we were all good with the rest of Brian's,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And from what I've read of the interlocal cooperation, I mean, even before this, it adds enough of that context we were talking about earlier in that it doesn't just have to be other units of government, but, you've mentioned the library, Gage Park, things like that, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that what you have written provides enough context to let them know that this isn't just your average
Just not
work with
counties.
the county thing,
Yeah.
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 Should we make under conferee where it says council member Duncan, should we put Spencer's first name?
Yes. For consistency, I will do that, yes.
What about, that same meeting was Councilmember Karen Hiller? Do we add her or not? That was
I'd
our
have to go
Zoom
back.
meeting. Huh?
Yeah, I'd have to
Jim?
go back and look.
Would you like to add council member Hiller to this? You have Duncan on there. Did she speak to interlocal government? I don't know.
That was the
Yeah, I
Zoom.
think they both
They
indicated
attended
they
both,
favored
yeah.
interlocal cooperation.
So,
Not
We'll
sure
go ahead and add
anybody's
both
against
council
it.
members.
Yeah.
Because that was the meeting where they kind of talked at the same time.
Yeah, they were
So-
talking over each
All
other.
over, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, got.
Since you're making that change,
Thank you.
there are that listing of topics. I don't know why I missed this before, but
Okay.
two of the most important ones that are trending right now are IT and cybersecurity.
Oh,
You know, Topeka has more IT capacity than a lot of any of the surrounding communities. And cybersecurity is something
At the
that not every
forefront, for
city
sure.
can afford to do on its own.
So maybe add that in there
So propose
as
a
a bullet?
final
bullets?
line item, yeah.
Yeah.
Call it IT and cybersecurity.
You okay with that, Dan?
I'm sorry.
So you want that as one or
It
two
affects your
separate bullets?
job.
IT like slash cybersecurity?
I think one, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be split up.
See, anything else on page 13?
if we're listing, can we say these include but are not limited to?
Yeah, or something about it's non-exhaustive.
Yeah. On that list there in the middle of the page.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, but are not limited to. That's fine. On page 14, so conduct joint meetings, do we want to, was there any reason behind us telling them they should meet every 2 months? The joint county commission and governing body meeting? Or was that just something that we felt like they should meet 6 times a year kind of thing? I can imagine from their perspective, between JADO and some other projects, that they probably feel like they meet a couple of times already. Do we want to make it a little bit more ambiguous and just say hold joint meetings,
On a regularly
You can
scheduled
say-
basis or something like that?
something like that, where it's not just as needed, because then it might be once.
Kind of said just on a regular basis. that
Yeah.
you-
Regularly scheduled basis. Then they could do like quarterly or semi-annually
Sure.
or whatever they choose to do.
So the governing body and the BOCC hold joint meetings on a regularly scheduled basis.
Sounds good to me.
Means once every 10 years.
No.
Okay, that's good.
Is there anywhere in all of our writings that says what BOCC means?
I have notes to spell out all those acronyms that I'm underlining them as I'm seeing them, so thank you, Brian.
To be frank, it took me a minute to figure out what BOCC was. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves, these acronyms.
We could add in the
Acronym
introduction, we'll have to do
index.
Definitions.
terms
Yeah.
and
Definitions.
acronyms.
Acronym index.
Vocab.
Should we use the same language that we used in the recommendation on that create joint city-county body where we name the city auditor in the last sentence?
Oh, the city manager or the
The
proposed city
proposed
auditor.
city auditor?
Yeah, we'll just do that for consistency.
I mean, goes on to talk about it
Yep.
in the next. But
See below.
see below.
On the bottom of 14, the bullet list, is that another opportunity to put, like includes but not limited to, insert on that? This is not the total list of auditor functions.
I would prefer to leave that as is, I think.
I think it looks good just the way it is. It's fine. I think it reads okay.
Brenda, on page 15 of the list of conferees, we have Doug Jones. Would you identify him as the Johnson County Auditor?
Okay, sure.
And I don't know if we identified Hannes Zacharias.
She was going to add titles to them.
Yep.
Well, he was a practice professor, now retired, practice professor at the KU MPA program.
I have his title from the first meeting,
Yeah.
so I'll plug it in anywhere it
Okay.
needs to go. Yep.
And was the public comment written? Or was it verbal? That
Both
Monica
those were
Hill,
written, I think.
I think they were
They're
both
emails.
written. Emails, weren't
I
they?
believe Leo was here.
Leo is here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Leo was
Okay.
in
In person,
person.
but the other one was an email.
Okay.
Do you want me to add that?
Yeah, should we distinguish that it was a written comment?
I did for mine. They were both written.
Yeah, so we should probably be consistent.
On page 15, amend the charter to, on your recommendation, amend the charter to create the office of the city auditor. We'll probably need to put where it says city council there into governing body.
Okay.
The auditor would be appointed by the governing body and serve at the pleasure of the governing body.
Anything on page 15? Anything else?
Nothing else.
I don't think so. This,
Oops. So we're on page 16?
Yes.
Okay. The last line before Code of Ethics, I think the 10th is a O instead of a 0, the 10th member.
Yeah, the 10th member.
We're on page 16 now, right?
Yes.
Okay. In this recommendation, we do talk about going from 10 to 5 years. Is that our recommendation, or we leave it at 10?
Yeah, our
Down there further,
recommendation
though,
was just 10 years.
Following comments by the city clerk, a majority of the committee chose to stay with the current 10-year provision.
Okay. I just need to read a little bit further now, don't I?
Did we discuss that the 10th member being appointed by the mayor would act as the chair, or just they would still self-select a chair? It's not mentioned in the recommendation, but I thought we had that
we
conversation.
wanted them to self-select,
Okay,
is my recollection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it was discussed,
okay.
for sure. Oh, there's another O for 0.
Yep, it's in there twice. On the fourth
The main
to last
body paragraph.
line, yeah.
I have just one clarification. Under committee membership, you've got, the committee recommends that the charter be amended to provide that the Citizens Government Review Committee be comprised of 10 members, 1 member from each council district, and the mayor. Do you want to add Because it's really 9 council districts and then the mayor, so just. anyway,
Yeah, just
that's
for-
fine.
Clarification purposes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it would need to read something like, be comprised of 10 members, 1 from each city council district, appointed by the council member, and a 10th from the mayor, or something like that, or
The 10th that is a large member appointed by the mayor.
something like that.
Okay.
Or it could say comprised of 10 members, 9 being from each city council district residing in that district and appointed by that council member, and the 10th appointed by the mayor at large.
Are we on the code of ethics
Yep, I just started reading that one.
in that? Okay. Got a couple questions and comments about it.
Should we make that say governing body? Should be.
In the explanatory statement, if you've all had a chance to read through it, and I wasn't here when you all had this discussion, but at the bottom of page 16, the last sentence says, "It is this committee's stance that you must have a firm, non-negotiable consequence." That's, it should say, "It is this committee's stance that you must have firm, non-negotiable consequences with penalties to enforce the intolerance of these types of misconducts."
Should we say it is this committee's recommendation instead of
Well,
stance?
no, what I'm saying is, that's the explanatory comment, so it sounds pretty harsh. And then you come in with a recommendation, and I am making a comment here.
Yeah.
The recommendation is they sign a pledge,
Yeah.
that there's a disconnect there between the
Okay.
explanatory statement and the recommendation you all came up with, okay?
Okay.
Gotcha.
And that was why I was referencing the memo that I prepared for that meeting, where I did a comparison of other cities, including the city of Olathe, which has, in their charter, they have laid out a pretty sophisticated, actually maybe too detailed, sequence of if there's an allegation of interference with the city manager's duty that's investigated by the city attorney or an outside law firm, and it could lead to censure. And if it continued misconduct, it's a request for resignation. And if it continues beyond that, it's an ouster proceeding is requested. Go to the district attorney for ouster.
Yeah.
So that is the most detailed.
Well, and that's what we-
strongest. And Olathe has had a very, very strong city manager form of government, a very stable form of government
Sure.
over the years.
Well, and we found out in our discussions last week that Topeka has that too. They're just as strict as that. They just aren't, and that was confirmed by looking at the charter and reading the memo that we have all those.
But it's not within the code itself. Not within the only penalty that I know of under the city code for violation of the charter ordinance is the general penalty provision, which is a misdemeanor offense, which is not appropriate for what we're talking about. So these, having something, dealt with internally through these procedures that we have, like HR-related procedures, I understand that, but in the real world, that does not work all that well. In the real world, practicing municipal law for 42 years,
Yep.
It does not work well.
I'll throw it to Mary to explain.
Yeah, and I mean, it's up to all of you what you want to recommend. What was discussed in my memo and what the conversation was at the last meeting was the fact that the source for some of these penalties that you referenced that Olathe includes in their charter is actually coming from state law. And so to Zach's point, Topeka does have the ability for these ousters, for mandamus actions, some of these other steps. I think we had the conversation that I don't think it necessarily hurts anything if your recommendation is to put it in the charter, but I don't know that it adds anything that doesn't already exist through other sources of law.
Yes. I mean, we
Yeah.
came to the conclusion there was verbiage already in existence. And we just needed to have a recommendation to remind the council or remind the government body that we have become aware of this. And now that we know, we're going to make sure that you know kind of
Yeah. And I think that's why,
procedure.
The reason I'm bringing this up at the first place is just, as I said before, the right word is disconnect. There's a disconnect between the explanatory statement and the recommendation. The explanatory statement says non-negotiable consequences with penalties.
Oh, we can change that.
And we're not talking about that. I mean, your recommendation you all agreed to is the recommendation you agreed to, and it just needs to match up with the explanatory statement. That's all I'm saying. I'm not
Right.
trying to revisit the recommendation.
And I think why the language is so strong, this committee's stance is that you have firm non-negotiable consequences with penalties. That the only thing we could technically add would be to have them sign their name every time that they are appointed or elected to public office, that you fully understand there are a code of ethics that you follow, that you understand the charter and the consequences of violating state or municipal law, without having to go so far as to tell them you need to expand on the code of ethics and just copy paste what the state tells us we already have to be doing. We could do that, that is an option we could recommend.
Yeah.
Also expand the code of ethics to include penalty clauses under state law for violation of oath of office or code of ethics. That is entirely possible as well. But,
Well,
I believe the committee came up with the stance or the tone that the signature is similar to
The oath that they
an
take.
oath, or just
Shouldn't it be?
acknowledging receipt of like an employee handbook, and that in the handbook is behavior and do's and don'ts and cans and can'ts and potential consequences. Does that make sense? Am I
Yes.
rephrasing this?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where the committee came to an agreement on.
I think, I've already made this comment before, but having lived here longer than anybody else in this room, okay, and having lived through different forms of government, the charter ordinance was adopted, and that prohibition that was put in, which is a really strong prohibition. I mean, it's pretty abrupt, okay? It was in direct response to the chaos that had occurred in the previous forms of government prior to city manager. And I think the people that drafted and adopted the charter ordinance did it very deliberately to say we don't want to get back in those days where council members were interfering with the city administrator or form of government, and now we're going to the city manager form of government, and we don't want to have a repeat. We want people to stay in their own lane. So they put that prohibition in there and probably believed that that was good enough, you know, that people would honor that. And we have credible evidence that
Maybe
that's
they
not always
not.
occurred. And we just don't want to see it happening anymore because it does undercut the ability of the city manager to function. And it probably contributes to some of the turnover that we've had as city managers over the years, you know? And I have seen, and again, I'm sorry for giving my life story once again, but I have dealt with a lot of city managers over the years across Kansas, and this kind of interference with the city manager's role is not unheard of, you know? Practically every city manager that I've had a close
Deals with
relationship with has suffered from that
Yeah.
at one point or other. And sometimes it's been a train wreck for some people's careers, and it's damaged their communities.
Well,
And
and I-
you don't want it to happen in Topeka.
Right. I think the whole point was that we want the governing body to know that we are now recognizing that there's an issue. And whether it was in the ordinance or not, it's not being followed. And so this is our way of saying, you know, this governing body put this into ordinance. Nobody, you know, we talked about they're not required to sign a code of ethics. So if somebody was appointed to office tomorrow and they just didn't want to follow their code of ethics, you know, they didn't approve them. They still have to abide by them. But if nobody actually takes any action, they can, you know, their only accountability is an election every 4 years. So this is something that can help with that public accountability, right? Did you sign a code of ethics? Did you understand them? And then you get into the point of, you know, we have a lot of options under state law that say, we now know that you understand the code of ethics, state and local. As a member of the public, I feel that you've violated your code of ethics, and now I have the option under state law to start a petition or bring it to other city council members or the mayor, and then they can talk about censure or taking it to the DA or the attorney general. Topeka has some pretty strong language now. I mean, a misdemeanor of $1,000 fine isn't a small amount of money either. I think that
Yeah.
in my mind, being accused of a misdemeanor and being charged $1,000 would be a pretty good way of staying
Yeah, I
in
think
line.
and I'm not disagreeing with what you say, other than the fact it's a tough call for a city attorney to prosecute a sitting member of a city council for.
Well, that's why they
For
started,
talking
right?
out
How
of
do you
school
report
with-
and audit your boss? You know?
Well, speaking of audit, on page 15, on the auditor's duties, isn't there something in here under letter C about whistleblower reports? I mean, it's not the same thing as whistleblowing, but
It
the
is
auditor,
It's whistleblowing.
the auditor's got some teeth there too. So,
And on the topic of whistleblowing, we did have that new legislation that
Yep.
passed this past year
Yep.
that essentially extends similar protections that you see under federal law to municipal workers who raise concerns about somebody violating any law. The other quick clarification that I wanted to make is that the decision to pursue an ouster action or some of these other options wouldn't fall on the city attorney. That falls on the county attorney or, the district attorney here in Shawnee County or the attorney general. So you don't necessarily have that layer of conflict that somebody's got to decide whether to take action against one of their bosses, 10 bosses.
because it ends up in somebody else's jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
The ouster proceeding in Kansas is a very severe process, and it's a
Yes.
very high standard in order to remove somebody from
Yeah.
office. So can we, I don't know if we want to move past this, but I have a simple solution to my problem with the disconnect between the explanatory statement and the recommendation, okay? And that is just to strike the sentence at the bottom of page 16.
Sure.
It is this committee's stance.
Sure.
Okay?
That's fine.
Because it is not the committee's stance to have a hard line. I'm
Agreed.
sorry, it's not. I mean, it's a,
Okay.
you're addressing the issue, you
Yeah.
know, and it's a step forward. maybe it'll be revisited in 10 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They might look
Maybe
at
it
it.
won't be a
Right.
problem.
Yep, I think
What-
that's perfectly fine. I think that,
Right. And is it not possible when we present this to the governing body, they could do even more than what we suggest? I mean, they can run with it. Am I right?
It's within the realm
you would
of
imagine
possibility.
that, you would imagine that any good public servant would want to always be looking at their code of ethics and always be trying to do their best. So
So-
that would be the goal, right? Is we
Yeah.
put this in front of them and they say, we were unaware, let's review and take action.
Yeah. So there's that.
And just a little bit of cleanup on the language, if you could, Brenda. I know this is the way it was presented to you, and I'll get off of this here. In the explanatory statement, right in the middle, the language is a little wordy. So the city of Topeka's city council appeared to be out of compliance with Topeka's charter. Can we just say the city council? We say some members or some council members may be out of compliance, may not be, some council members may not be in compliance with the charter dash.
It was in reviewing this, reviewing process and discussion, the city of Topeka's governing body appeared to have instances where it was out of compliance. Or are you just trying to say individually, like, not everybody was out of
Yeah, well,
compliance?
so these
but
are
some were?
allegations, they're just
Yeah,
allegations.
it
but-
needs to be
but we-
just.
Yeah.
These are allegations that we took seriously.
Right.
Yeah.
The term is credible,
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
The credible allegations
Yeah.
that some council members, they may not even be present one, or current ones.
Right.
We don't have names, but there have been
Alleged,
instances where they
yeah.
have
Yeah.
gone out of their lane.
Yeah. Last week I said we can't unring that bell. We've heard it and we can't unring it and it needs to be
Yeah.
addressed. And this is our solution.
Yeah.
Brenda, I didn't clean up that language at all.
Well, just say the governing body, and that's,
Well, I don't want to indict the whole governing body. you
well, we don't know now, do we? We don't know now, do we?
Right. I mean, past
No.
and/or present members of the governing body have been found to be or are accused of being out of compliance.
We heard allegations of
Right.
past
It was in
members.
in this reviewing process and discussion, it was found that past or present members of the governing body appeared to be out of compliance.
It was alleged. It
Yes,
wasn't found.
yes,
Correct.
Alleged to be out.
yes, that's a good word.
With no direct, clear.
Do you have enough thoughts to play around with, Brenda?
I think so, yes. Mary and I will get it done.
Thank you.
And also, we'll get this all cleaned up and sent back out to you guys for one final review, and then you can send me anything that I missed or you think,
Okay.
changed your mind on or whatever, so.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I will do that this afternoon. This will post publicly with the agenda tomorrow, probably mid-afternoon.
Anything else on the last page?
Yeah, on the last page, we're striking the sentence, the incomplete sentence at the top of the page.
Yep.
For Bill Finder, would you put him down, lecturer, Washburn University?
Yep.
And then on the the recommendation really should end at the end of that first sentence, shouldn't it? And this other language, this
Yeah.
other language could be put over in the explanatory statement or deleted.
Agreed.
It probably could be in the explanatory statement, couldn't it?
I think
Or committee
you
discussion, we
could,
don't really.
that second sentence, the committee found evidence that action steps are in place, but in fact reviewing, ours is more stringent. Letting them know that there's a reason we're not taking action
Yeah.
on this because some of that language already in place. But I agree that, we don't need to talk about
How
the
about saying
memos we
this
received.
committee found evidence of action, da, da, da. That should be at the beginning of the committee discussion and recommendations.
Okay.
So Brenda, can we move everything that starts with this committee found evidence, that goes to the beginning, and then you say the committee recommends the governing body take the following action,
That's
and we have the
perfect.
one liner, or the one sentence there.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Is that clear?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And Mary, you're okay with the reference that's in here about
Yeah.
what your memo states? It's okay. Do we need to go over this?
I think you'd be more comfortable if everybody let me know that this worked for them.
Hey, can we talk, before we do that, here's my thought, okay, for the presentation, which is a week from yesterday,
Yep.
right?
Yes,
Yes.
6 days from now.
You're running the PowerPoint.
Well, actually, this PowerPoint will be sent to the communications team, and they'll click through as needed. And we'll also have access to a clicker, right, Dan? Okay.
Okay.
So we can manually click through it if we need to.
Well, I had thought this through, I guess. I have some comments I wanted to make about each one of the recommendations.
Right.
Provide a
Yeah.
little bit of context and all that. And I had visions of you being right there and going through the audit recommendations. I mean, flashing them on the board and saying, look at that, and reading it maybe for them.
I imagine that, and we kind of talked about this last week.
Well, I know from the
obviously-
minutes, I know you guys did, I wanted
Yeah,
to, wasn't
so
sure.
obviously, you'll be our communications agent, right? You'll be representing the whole committee. We'll all be there. I assume that we
Yeah,
all have
yeah.
a plan to attend. If you would like one of us or myself to sit and go through the PowerPoint, that way you don't have to worry about clicking through it, then I'm more than happy to do that. And
Well, I don't trust Dan.
unless you throw it to one of us for more discussion,
Right.
then, we'll always be there to answer.
Well,
any
you might be
questions.
asked,
Oh,
questions.
sure.
Well, at
But I
the
mean, like
end,
during your
absolutely.
presentation, if, you're going through government structure, I'm more than happy to let you just talk about it instead of each one of us having to come up
Right.
at a time.
Do we have unlimited time, Brenda?
No.
Seriously?
No.
Will there be
The
a
answer
time
to
limit
that
imposed on us?
is no.
So typically, we like no more than 10 minutes on a presentation. Of course, there are
No
times.
more than
when-
what?
10 minutes. Now,
Or what? They just cut us off?
presentations typically are limited to 10 minutes. They do last longer, they are shorter. We have you on the agenda so that there isn't the ability for questions and back and forth discussion. So typically, it's a presentation, then you have questions at the end, and they can ask questions along the way. So, but
They can
Yeah.
always extend time if
Sure.
they
I
need
was
to,
gonna
but
say.
that's up to the discretion
Yeah.
of the governing
governing
body.
body.
To
We
say it a
don't-
different way, the
we don't
questions
set
and
it-
discussion
right.
are not part of the 10 minutes,
Right,
correct?
and it's not a set 10 minutes. We suggest 10 minutes to keep the meeting moving, get your presentation across, gives you time for discussion and a Q&A session. So
Are we on the agenda on the new business?
you are under action items. The agenda has non-action and action items. So I included the cover sheet that's included with the packet, and it's going to be receipt of recommendations. So the governing body will acknowledge receipt of those recommendations, which allows for discussion and that type of thing.
There it is, okay. All right,
Yep.
so do we need a conclusion? Is that our last
Correct.
to do? Okay. Do we just need to say in conclusion and some stuff? Okay.
Yeah,
How about,
absolutely.
all right, I got distracted. In conclusion, The committee thanks or appreciates the trust the governing body has placed in us. We have strived to reflect the concerns of the citizens of the city of Topeka. We again thank all the conferees and comments from the public and the outstanding support from city staff.
City staff.
How's that sound? And we're done.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just-
In conclusion, the committee thanks, appreciates, which one do you like better? Thanks or appreciates the trust the governing body has placed in us. We have strived to reflect the concerns of the citizens of the city of Topeka. We again thank all of the conferees and comments. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Comments from the public and the outstanding support from city staff. All right, y'all good with that conclusion?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
We are.
Do any other business to discuss?
Did everyone get a chance to review the very basic PowerPoint I put together? It is quite literally in order our recommendations. That way everybody can kind of follow along of what we're talking about.
Sure.
I did not want to put up a bunch of text on there
Yeah,
about
they're
the
not gonna
recommendations.
wanna
It would
read
be
it.
too small and people online aren't going to be able to read it
Yeah,
if I did
I
that.
agree.
So this is just
Basic.
more so than anything to guide conversation visually. The only
It
kind of
looks
wording,
aesthetically pleasing.
the only wording on here is the purpose, which I pulled straight from the website
Charter.
about the resolution that made this
Create
exist,
us.
and
Yeah.
all of our names.
Are you talking about literally this thing here?
Yep.
It looks just fine.
Yes, okay.
I was looking for more, but it's this is fine.
As information, the resolution you're referring to, 9600, is also attached in the agenda packet.
Right. So I've got like the introduction in here. I guess I could probably put a conclusion slide in here, but it does have questions and discussion slides, so
Isn't that our conclusion? Questions and comments?
pretty much
Yeah.
that
Okay.
I think
little
so.
blurb that you just said out
That's our
loud. and,
conclusion.
Like I said, super simple, just there to guide conversation and make sure people understand what we're talking about in order. Obviously, the governing body will have this, but for the members of the public that are in attendance or online, hopefully this helps them figure out what it is we're talking about at each given time.
Silly question of the day. When we attend the meeting, are we all seated together-ish? Or
Can.
So the way that we have it, we have a table at the front or a podium, so I'm assuming you both will sit at the table, and then there's chairs directly behind that the rest of the committee members can sit in the front row, so that if you need to come up, and then you guys can stand at the podium if there's questions or whatever, so
Okay.
set up. Conducive to presentation.
any other business?
Well, let me ask Zach, I know you've given this some thought and everything, and I appreciate what you're saying here, but I'm wondering about the public, if anybody out there is paying attention to what we do. I mean, they can be listening to it all, but if they're looking on the screen and they see this, I mean, they'll have to follow the conversation to see what we're talking about, what the actual recommendations are.
Sure. And it'll be on the agenda that
The
can be found online
Yeah,
as
the
well.
report will be included in the agenda.
Right. But if, Jim, if you'd like, I can put the,
Well,
like what we have here, the little summaries of
Brief
recommendations,
summary.
I can put one sentence each on the committee recommends X, Y, Z. That way,
is
Yeah.
it possible to dumb everything down to?
It
I
would
appreciate
take
that you
10
don't want to have a
minutes
whole
to do,
screen
yeah.
full of words, but just,
yep,
Like 2 bullet points max.
Really-
Below government
I will have
structure.
like on the
done.
auditors, create the position of city auditor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right.
I can do that, and I will get that done tonight. Hopefully, I can send that to Brenda this evening, and
Is that
you can
reasonable
all-
to ask you of?
And I thought about doing it, and because I had the same thought. I just didn't want there to be
Too
this
much.
much writing on every
No.
slide.
Oh,
No,
no.
no.
Yeah.
So, because I even had to amend this to fit on the page because it was so large, so.
What do you guys think? Do you
Yeah,
just
I
add a
agree
little
with
bit?
that.
Yep, I will do a sentence or two.
Some people need to see
super,
it.
yes.
Do you trust Zach to do it right?
Yes.
Of course.
Look, this was the hardest English
Unequivocally.
class I've ever taken. No one has ever redlined it like this before, but
Yeah.
this was educational for me too.
Yes.
Yes, I will absolutely do that, and then I will get
You
that
have
done
a
this
free
evening.
hand to write whatever recommendations you want to, Zach.
Okay, I'll just see how much everybody's paying attention. We'll just put whatever on there. No, I will do that this evening and get it to Brenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got our form, and I assume this has already been submitted and everything, so we've got our action item, and it also lists, so the city council already knows the list of things that we're going to talk about. I don't know if I guess it's in your packet, but we have our action form.
Okay.
Cover sheet for your agenda packet item. Yep.
Yep. Because you said this is really the only thing they have right now
Yeah,
until we
correct.
finalize this.
Yep.
Yep.
Anything else?
I think we did it.
Are you all are planning on attending?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
We will be there,
Okay.
backing you up.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing to do on a Tuesday.
Well, we have over 20 minutes. What do you want to talk about? You sure there's nobody from the public?
Hey, there's people watching online and stuff, so
Okay.
Are there?
We hope so. I hope so.
I know at least two. Or at least they were following along.
Maybe a third, depending on what time it is?
There you go.
Okay. Okay, then probably not a third.
All right. I think our work is concluded. If there's a motion to adjourn, we will
I move to adjourn.
adjourn. And,
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we will meet on Tuesday night.
Tuesday. That's it. That was our last meeting.
Everybody knows where the
Done.
city council